Hi, welcome back to my channel about the Black Mass Burden. I'm Frederick Sagerfeld. Today we're going to talk about imperialism. What comes to mind when you hear that word is usually West European expansionism. We think of the 19th century and the 20th century. We think of India and the scramble for Africa and things like that. These things, of course, did take place. They happened, but they're much less unique than we think. Just like with racism and slavery, we see imperialism as a white monopoly and as a primarily modern phenomenon. That is not correct. In fact, the existence of empires in history has been the norm, the historical rule. It was the most common form of political organization for thousands of years. The Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari has written that most people today are descendants of an empire. Let us go through the three largest empires in history. The biggest one was the British Empire. We all know about it, about India, and about how they ruled the waves, and so on. And at its peak, it covered about 1/4 of all land and 1/4 of all people in the world. The second largest empire is the Mongols. It was the biggest contiguous empire in history. It covered almost the entire Eurasian landmass, except Southeast Asia, India, the Arab Peninsula, and Western Europe. But they came as far west as Albania and Finland, but then the Khan died, so they had to go back. They were cruel and brutal mass murderers. When they had conquered a city, they would kill people and then build pyramids of the skulls of the conquered and killed people. They committed genocides, and the sexual violence was very prevalent. It is said that the geneticists have found that one of 200 of all living men are direct descendants of Genghis Khan. The third largest empire was the Russian Empire. We tend to ignore this when we talk about imperialism, and we don't think of Russia as an imperial power for several reasons, I think. The first is that we associate imperialism with the West, and Russia is not seen as a Western country. The second reason is that the USSR, the Soviet Union, tricked us all into believing that it was not an inheritor of a major imperial power, and that it did not continue the expansion of its imperial predecessor. But in fact, the wide east of Russia was conquered in many ways that were similar to the conquest of the US West. First of all, there were fur trappers, and then came the built forts, and the local peoples were subjugated and killed, and then there was mass migration. A lot of people have heard of Alaska being sold to the US by Russia, but I don't think a lot of people know that the Russians had colonies as far southeast as California. And for Russia, California is southeast. It all depends on perspectives. Of the 10 largest empires in history, only 3 were West European. Apart from the British, there were the Spanish Empire and the Portuguese Empire. The rest are, apart from the Russians and the Mongols, Chinese and Arabs in different versions. I don't defend imperialism, not in any way. And I will get back to its crime in later videos. But if we see imperialist expansion as a only Western phenomenon, as a solely Western phenomenon, and if we single out Western imperialism as something unique, instead of viewing it as part of a much wider global phenomenon as part of a world history of expanding powers. Then we only see half the picture, and our knowledge and understanding of the phenomenon becomes limited. One example to put things in perspective: Spain was part of a Muslim empire 500 years longer than Latin America was part of a Spanish one. And yet we treat Spain as an imperial aggressor rather than a victim of imperialism. Why? It's because we take a Eurocentric perspective on the matter. Next week, we're going to get into some details about the empires. Don't miss that. Please subscribe. Until then, bye bye.